and they shift to the left side of their brain, and they operate out of the intellect, and the knowledge side of it, or the intellect, or the functionality side of it. And as they're operating out of the functionality side of it, they're trying to answer the questions and trying to get the truth that only the heart can deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I love you, like God says, I love you. I totally and unconditionally love you, and there's a purpose for your life. Well, they're trying to get those answers on the left side of the brain, and they can't get them. And so the more questions they have, the more answers, or the more answers they have, the more questions, and the more questions, the more questions, it becomes more and more hopeless and more hopeless. And what happens is they end up, it's like that deep, dark, black pit that we talked about. And ultimately what happens is that they end up in a place where it's just absolutely hopeless, okay? And so what happens is, if you realize what's going on in that whole thing, you also realize that you've got all these places of protection or protectors that are speaking through all this. And so now all of a sudden you get stuck. Well, you may be stuck because there's too many voices going on in their mind, all right? And they aren't able to pick up what the voices are saying because they've got all this stuff going and they can't nail it down. And when that happens, what happens is you keep asking the question over and over, and they just aren't getting, they've got all these things going on in their mind. And so what happens is, if you wholeheart the brain, all right, and by wholehearting the brain, then what ends up happening is that God's presence comes into that place in the mind that's trying to protect, that was never created to protect. And when that happens, you end up in a situation where they're in a place where the thoughts slow down or stop, and when they do that, they can distinguish their thoughts. And I've had, and I've seen that where all of a sudden they just can't get it, and all of a sudden I wholeheart their mind, and now they're getting it, and now it's coming out. And so the wholehearting their mind in those situations is a big deal.
Wholehearting their mind is different than the intellect.
It's the same.
The significance of asking what age things happen is because we're looking for the earliest?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I notice already that some people have a specific age and some people have a general age.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way it
Right.
is.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I just feel like there's a deeper root. I've done that before. Well, I just feel like that's not it. And that's just my gut. Just
Right,
going,
right.
Lord's like, ask for a deeper root. And sometimes it's an earlier event. So try to find that deepest first event.
And then there's other times where you get the rut, but that isn't sufficient. And so I will do a basket, all right, and I'll do the rut, and I'll focus on the rut and the first thing, but then I'll do the basket
Yeah.
and forgive everybody else
Right.
that did the same thing
Right.
to me. And I do that continuously because
Yes,
of the
I do
fact
too.
that,
Yeah.
that just clears things away. But the basket goes really fast,
It
and
does.
then, you just do the basket, whatever that person's, whoever I need to forgive in regards to this, or whatever they said or did or failed to say or failed to do.
Right, because like I mean, sometimes I do the basket for that, but sometimes they'll go, well, I'll say, is there anyone else associated, say, with low self-esteem that I need to forgive? And it's like, well, it's things that happen later or throughout their life. And so then, like, Chuck taught me that, to just take them to, I start with the root, and then I go to all those places. Lord, take them to all those places where, and then wholeheart that separately. I mean, is that what you're talking about? Like doing the basket? I mean, when I'm wholehearting it, like, and having God take, come and bring healing to those places, and all the protectors that, I start with the root event, and then I go to the other events. Is that what you?
Yeah, and just who else do I need to forgive about
Yeah, yeah.
about just neglecting me and
Yeah.
or rejecting me, or whatever the subject matter is. Yeah. Mhm.
So any questions on top of those things?
Because I've had people that refuse to forgive in sessions, but they always forgive. All right, and here's what ends up happening for me is, from a reason and logic standpoint, what I tell people is that you don't need to forgive as long as it's okay if that person, you want them to be Lord of your life.
Oh, that's awesome.
And if you want them to go ahead and be in charge of your moves, and you constantly thinking about them, and they control your behavior and what you do, then don't worry about forgiving. But if you don't want them to be Lord of your life, and if you actually want God to be your Lord of your life, then you need to forgive them.
Right.
And then I go through what Kathy was talking about is that you're really forgiving for you're forgiving because Jesus forgave you and shed his blood on the cross. And of course we can go into Matthew that, if you don't forgive, neither will you be forgiven, and that kind of stuff, as well as go into the fact that that you're just really, you're the one that gets blessed from it, like Kathy talked about earlier.
Yeah, we did.
So-
We talked about it before we were filming, but I was talking about one particular person who really struggled with forgiveness, and I a lot of times I'll talk about the hook in you. It's like I say, you're like a monkey on a string. There's a soul tie in there, and that person is, like Chuck said, they're jerking you around all over the place, and it's not for them. You can choose not to forgive them, but they don't know and they don't care. So what is forgiveness for? It's for your freedom. And so I've never had anybody ultimately walk out of a session and say, I'm not going to do it. You just talk with them and explain what forgiveness is. And I've told many people, it's, I used to think of it as like, you must forgive, but no, it's like I think of it this way, it's like the Lord's saying, oh, just please let it go so you can, we can have fellowship. It's for you, it's not for that person. It's for you, and it's freedom, and it's wholeness, and it's, intimacy with the Lord when you do those things. So who would want to pass that up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. You go through anger and maybe sadness or depression or fear or anxiety, and then go to the next trauma event and find those same things.
Protections, yes.
Yes.
Yes, you can. And that's what you do over and over. Over and over.
Yeah, there's no rule that says, okay, you get it once and there's only one of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's different broken parts of your heart that if you can visualize your heart breaking, and every time your heart breaks, okay, and it's not just broke once, every time it breaks, what happens is in that break, what happens is it comes with God's original creation, okay? And God's original creation had fear of the Lord,
Yes.
righteous anger, all right? And so it had anger and fear, but what happens is it gets perverted in that break, okay? All right? And when it gets perverted, then you get the anxiety and the wrath and the confusion, and all those different things come out of what God originally created, but they get perverted because we are self-protecting instead of making God our protector. And so in the midst of that, it doesn't matter how many times it breaks. Each time that the heart breaks, what's going to happen is, and you can have the broken heart break, all right? But each time the heart breaks, what happens is there is another opportunity to have fear and anxiety and all those different types of protectors. So you deal with them each time. Now, a lot of times they're strung together. And when they're strung together, that means that there's an original core place or root place where they start. And then if you get that core place and root place, then it's easy to take care of the rest on that line on there. But that doesn't mean that's the only line, that's the only place. There might be another broken place where it represents another little girl or another.
So true. And just otherwise, like somebody asked me a while back, well, why don't you just do it chronologically? Like, well, then go through the womb, and if you get all the protectors there, you're done. You know what I mean? Start at the beginning. But it doesn't work that way. And an example would be one of the gals that I had a very strong need to control, and So then, in each layer, there was like revelation to her heart that I needed to control because of this incident. And then the next layer is like, I needed to control because of that incident. And yes, I don't have to do that anymore in that instance, and I don't have to do that anymore in this instance. And so each layer was new revelation of how she could lean in to the Lord and trust Him to be her protector and provider in all those situations. So if there's a sexual violation that made her have need to control, she's like, no, God was with me. I just didn't know how to go to Him. And then if there was, say, I don't know, physical abuse or, abandonment, oh, I don't have to control myself. God will never abandon me. You know what I mean? So in each layer, that need to control just kept going down and down. And she was learning how to just lean into God and just, go, oh, I can let all of this go. I don't have to do this anymore. So.
Did you say a void place?
Uh-huh.
That's a very excellent question, and that's something that I'm actually getting. We're just getting deeper and deeper in, okay, and dealing with it more and more, and it's a really important question, okay. All right. And so do you want to talk about it first?
No, because it's so new to me.
Okay.
Honestly, I couldn't even teach on it. So.
All right. So there's a category of protectors that relate to confusion, okay. All right. And they're all connected to confusion, okay? And those are the places that you go to disappear, or go to, and what really, the visualization is anger and pain really can't be connected. They have to be separated, okay? And so somehow or another, when anger is there and you've got pain there, there's this place that comes up in confusion. But if the trauma is bad enough, you end up going into places like empty places or void places or numb places, or sleep is another one that happens, okay? Or even like fantasy. And so that's the whole category and group of places, okay? And so when you end up going into those places, you just disappear in those places. And pretty soon, those places take over, okay? Like and when they take over, they become really dominant, okay? Sometimes where all of a sudden you start talking to the person and they're in this numb void place and everything, okay? And so what happens is it's a protector like anything else, okay? And so what happens is, as you have sometimes you'll have partnerships between the empty and void places and the numb places and the mind, okay? All right? And so sometimes I do them together, okay? Where all of a sudden you have the empty and the void place, and as I'm talking to the empty and the void place and the numb place, okay, then I'll also talk to the mind that's trying to figure it out, and you can't figure it out because the empty and the void place and all those type of things, somehow the racing thoughts and all that, they just kind of go together. So sometimes you're doing them at the same time, okay? But one thing that you'll find is that if you go after, or you're trying to do the numb place or the empty or void place, and you haven't handled anger, what happens is it's hard. Sometimes anger keeps you, if you can wholeheart anger, then that opens the gate for the void, the numb, the empty places, all that whole category, okay? Now when we're talking about this, I want everybody to understand that we're not talking about the normal whole heart process, okay? Mm-hmm. All right? What we're talking about is if someone is in a place where they've got this numb place that's keeping us from doing the whole heart process, all right? All right? Or they've got these void or numb places, or they're falling asleep or whatever it happens to be, then we go to that other tool that I talked about a few